A pro-Beijing disinformation campaign hits a new high, with a report saying it targeted Americans directly from Times Square and staged protests in Washington, D.C. The Stop Chinese Fentanyl Act of 2023 passing the House. The bill looking to sanction Chinese officials for their role in getting illegal drugs onto U.S. soil. TikTok getting more ambitious than ever. The platform just released a Chinese e-shop, painted as a new rival to online shopping giants Shein and Temu. And Beijing sending enough military equipment to Russia to gear up an army. What's China's role in the 17-month Ukraine invasion? What do you think? Let us know below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. An ongoing Chinese influence operation seems to be taking the art of disinformation to new heights. From appropriating U.S. news outlets to tapping social media influencers, all to support its own message. Cybersecurity firm Mandiant reported Monday on the pro-Beijing influence campaign known as High Energy. The firm first detailed the campaign a year ago, when High Energy puppeted over 70 fake news sites and social media accounts to push content that aligned with Beijing's political interests. But since then, the cyberspace-focused Chinese campaign seems to have gone a step further. New evidence suggests High Energy may have staged and financed 2 in-person protests in Washington, D.C. last year. They targeted areas including a specific import ban from Xinjiang, plus some U.S.-focused social issues like racial discrimination and abortion. No other media outlets covered the events. What's more, the campaign allegedly put up a pro-Beijing billboard in Times Square. So what's High Energy and how exactly does it work? Mandiant has named at least 2 Chinese companies behind the campaign. First, there's Shanghai Haishun Technology, a PR firm. There's also Financial Content Incorporated, which specializes in sneaking news stores onto legitimate websites. During High Energy's early stages, its arsenal of 72 news published stories criticizing the policies of the U.S. and its allies in 11 languages. All of those websites claimed they were independent. Topics range from supporting the erosion of Hong Kong's electoral system to China's so-called victory over COVID-19 and smearing outspoken critics of the Chinese Communist Party. Those pieces then got promoted by fake and paid social media accounts. But how much influence does High Energy really have? Though the overall disinformation campaign has been largely invisible, experts warn that's not necessarily good news. Instead, it's cause for alarm. Here's why. Because of the campaign's invisibility, it could effectively act as a Trojan horse, buying operators time to develop new tactics. In one case, a story under the campaign got picked up by AZ Central, an Arizona-based news website with over 6 million views per month. A Mandiant senior analyst described the High Energy campaign as, quote, not sophisticated, but very creative. Disappearing acts of the diplomatic kind. All traces of outgoing Foreign Minister Qin Gan scrubbed from the Chinese Foreign Ministry's website. His predecessor Wang Yi now taking his place. Qin Gan's removal and prolonged absence from the public eye has raised all sorts of questions around the Chinese Communist Party's opaque system. No reason has been given for his ouster, but speculation is rampant. That's due to the Communist Party's practice of purging officials since the Mao era, including from all official records. Some note the recent rumors of Qin Gan's affair with a well-known TV host. Many pointing to Qin Gan's being handpicked by Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping, but noting his departure after less than 7 months on the job. Some comments online say they don't buy the official narrative that Qin Gan's absence was due to, quote, health reasons. Chinese regime officials could soon face sanctions. That's for their role in the fentanyl's U.S. spread. A bill passed in the House Tuesday looks to attack the illicit drug at its source and at every step of the supply chain. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg reports.
The House of Representatives passed the Stop Chinese Fentanyl Act of 2023 on Tuesday. It's aimed at holding Chinese officials accountable for the spread of the illicit and deadly drug to the U.S. The bill would expand the definition of a foreign fentanyl trafficker in a 2019 sanctions law to include any Chinese entity involved in producing, selling, distributing, or financing synthetic opioids or precursors. The bill's main sponsor, Representative Andy Barr, says that the culpability of the CCP in the opioid epidemic in the U.S. does not end when the precursor products land in Mexico or illegally cross the southern border.
The CCP has adjusted their practices and begun producing precursor chemicals and outsourcing final production to cartel laboratories in Mexico to then exploit our porous southern border and poison the American people.
Under the bill, an entity in China that fails to take credible steps to detect or prevent opioid trafficking will face sanctions. Any senior Chinese officials with oversight on the issue, or those who haven't taken concrete measures to combat foreign opioid traffickers, will also face sanctions. The bill would also compel the president to determine if top Chinese officials, including the Ministry of Public Security and the General Administration of Customs, are foreign opioid traffickers. China is the primary source of fentanyl precursors. Data from the CDC in May shows that close to 110,000 Americans died of drug overdoses last year. 2/3 involve synthetic opioids, including fentanyl. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
A minor head injury in the Pacific Islands putting a diplomatic trip to China on pause. Wearing a lightly blood-spattered shirt and a small head bandage, the Prime Minister of Fiji explained Tuesday he took a fall while climbing a flight of stairs. That's after a misstep while looking at his cell phone.
I do not know whether my head is hurt more than the door or the door hurt more than my head.
Adding that his follow-up doctor's appointment on Friday would conflict with his schedule in Beijing. The island's leader was slated to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping in the city of Chengdu.
I'm sure there will be other invitations later on, and I hope I will be able to honor that invitation.
The leader has approached China relations with more caution than earlier prime ministers, calling off a 10-year policing agreement with Beijing earlier this year. On the other hand, he's inked deals with Australia and New Zealand, two U.S. allies, as Washington faces off with Beijing for influence in the Indo-Pacific. According to the Chinese embassy in Fiji, its ambassador was willing to invite him to visit China at mutual convenience and wished him a speedy recovery. News from the Kremlin, Putin planning to visit China in October. But over in London, the head of the UK's intelligence service is making a public accusation, calling the Russian ally Beijing complicit in Moscow's war on Ukraine. He stated when Putin invaded Ukraine, the Chinese very clearly supported the Russians. Something worth noting, just 20 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, China and Russia signed a statement announcing a no-limits partnership between them. The West has worked to block the Russian offensive, imposing sanctions to bar countries from selling firearms or war machines to Russia. Meanwhile, China has been increasing its engagement, selling Russia technology with both civilian and military uses. Sources from Political pointed out that Russia just ordered another round of bulletproof gear from Shanghai, and that the shipment contains enough to equip an army. Beyond that, official data shows that Chinese drone exports to Russia exceeded $100 million, 30 times its shipments to Ukraine. Aside military support, overall trade between China and Russia has reportedly grown nearly 40%. Beijing and Moscow also recently held a naval air joint drill. The 4-day-long exercise featured more than 10 warships and 30 military aircraft deployed in the Sea of Japan in the backyard of a close U.S. ally. U.S. lawmakers are echoing the UK concern, urging the White House toward a policy that will stop excusing Beijing's support for Moscow. Led by Jim Risch, 8 other U.S. senators signed the letter to Secretary of State Blinken last week. China-owned TikTok taking apparent aim at Twitter. The video-sharing app just launched a new feature, text-only posts. That's after Twitter's recent rebranding under CEO Elon Musk. Here's more.
TikTok announced this week that it will allow users to create text-only posts similar to posts on X. The new feature has a word limit of 1,000 characters, similar to Instagram stories. Posts can also contain hashtags and allow people to tag other users. With the new launch, TikTok becomes the second major social media firm to challenge the company formerly known as Twitter. Earlier this month, Meta Platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg launched Threads, also a text-only application. Beyond that, TikTok's product expansion doesn't appear to stop there. According to a Wall Street Journal report, the video-sharing app also plans to launch an e-commerce site to sell Chinese-made goods in the U.S. TikTok's moves come as the company faces heightened scrutiny by American officials and a potential ban in the U.S. That's over concerns that its data collection poses a risk to national security.
Shein, Temu, and now TikTok. The social media giant is set to launch a new e-commerce site this August to sell Chinese goods in the U.S. That's after its quiet kickoff of its online merchandise business, the TikTok Shop, in the U.S. last November. The shop lets vendors around the world sell products from their own regions, while the new site specifically sells products made in China. Ads encourage TikTok's audience toward the shopping platform in lives or videos. But the social media's new venture is becoming a cause for concern. Fears over its data collection and calculation are rising, while some say the feature might pose national security risks, with U.S. lawmakers warning confidential data could be leaked to the Chinese regime. The state of Montana already banned TikTok in May, becoming the first U.S. state to do so. Dozens more states have pushed more limited restrictions. Dumpling delights turned criminal. What seemed like a fun, fast-eating challenge to devour over 100 dumplings took a harrowing turn in China. How does the nation's anti-food waste law relate to its tragic history of famine? And what's driving Beijing's food fears? Let's zoom in.
When a restaurant in southwestern China advertised the King of Big Stomach Challenge, little did they expect it to take such an unexpected turn. The contest seemed straightforward enough. If customers could devour more than 100 dumplings, they get a free meal with an additional prize. But what followed was quite the surprise when China's market regulation body swiftly intervened, accusing the eatery of violating Chinese laws against wasting food. The body also probed several other restaurants over similar competitions. China passed its anti-food waste law 2 years ago. Now Beijing fines restaurant owners if they induce or mislead customers to leave excessive leftovers behind. But Chinese social media comments argue that eating competitions aren't a waste of food, since the food that isn't eaten doesn't actually go to the poor. Still, food waste has been described as an issue of national security by leader Xi Jinping. Many in the country still have memories of the Great Famine back in the 1950s, a disaster that killed anywhere from an estimated 20 to over 40 million people. Even today, feeding the country's 1.4 billion population is no easy task. In 2021, China became the world's 5th largest food importer. On the other hand, a 2021 United Nations report found China generates more food waste than any other nation. The amount of food wasted each year accounts for about 6% of China's total food production, enough to feed up to 50 million people, while another UN report discovered over 150 million people in China are malnourished due to large income gaps between rural and urban areas.
Another big story to look out for: burnt out or completely jobless. Some of China's young people are now choosing another path. What's happening with job scarcity in China? Stay tuned to meet China's full-time children. That reported more coming up tomorrow on China in Focus. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Is it too risky to do business in China? How does India fare in comparison? And why is Taiwan so critical to U.S. security amid tense U.S.-China relations? We sat down with Colorado Representative Ken Buck for insight. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.